where we provide 2 insights on go-to-market success in just 22 minutes. I'm the host of the show, Gary Schwacke. Each and every week, I host a conversation with an experienced professional who shares 2 insights and the stories behind them that they feel are critical to go-to-market success for growth companies. We will hear from executives and private equity investors with a variety of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. These professionals are working towards exceptional things with real-world constraints and challenges, just like you. If you're tired of marketing and sales hacking and want an authentic, practical guidance on go-to-market success, then this is the show for you. If you can't stick around for the live show, you can get recordings and highlights of all shows by subscribing to the review on our website, 2and22.com. Now, let's jump right into the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another week of 2 and 22. Very excited to have my friend Cristine Kao here with us today. She has an enormous amount of experience in the marketing realm with a lot of different size of companies and has seen a lot in terms of global strategies, building up a complete end-to-end go-to-market strategy, and one that is very data-driven given the exposure to tech. So let's look a little bit about Cristine's background. So she actually started earlier in her career with GE on the healthcare side, obviously a fast growth component of GE's businesses overall, which then led her to CareStream and ultimately then to Active Network, which is now a component of Global Payments, then part of Vista Equities portfolio, and lived through what we call dog years in that standpoint, trying to accomplish a lot in a very little amount of time, and is currently the Chief Marketing Officer of ABC Fitness Solutions, which is a portfolio company of Thoma, a prolific investor in the software and technology space. So without further ado, let's bring Cristine in for our chat. Hello.
Hey, Gary.
Thank you for being here. We're so excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. This is awesome.
All right.
To talk about marketing.
I know, well, that, and I can't believe that I spaced on this, but the paddleboarding and dragon boat stud, we have got to get to that. So let's come back to that for sure.
I've never been a stud ever, so
I don't know.
We'll get to that.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about this marketing journey. First, what brought you into marketing in the first place? Obviously, that discipline has changed. It seems like it changes by the year, let alone over the term of your career. What took you there in the first place, and what led you from one step to the next?
Well, that's a great call out. So as you said earlier, I started my career with GE Healthcare actually as a sales rep. I carried a quota of anywhere from 10 million and grew that to over about $50 million. And I think that commercial experience gave me a real appreciation for a very strong go-to-market strategy. And GE as a marketing engine, I mean, nobody did it better at the time.
Right.
And so I was able to successfully transfer from somebody being in the field, like years close to the ground, if you will, and became actually my first entree into marketing was actually a channel marketing manager, working with the sales team, developing the channel, and then eventually grew into more product marketing. And that was really it. And once I hit my stride with product marketing, I loved it. Just the ability to create compelling messaging and positioning and be able to impact market as a whole, as opposed to my own little territory at the time. I was hooked.
Yeah. That's awesome. And what a great experience. I mean, we say all the time that, in so many cases, they think about the deficiencies of a team's ability to see the whole pie and the opportunity to have lived a sales environment, especially for an organization that's, more enterprise in nature. Yeah. And then being able to see how that transcends then into product marketing and getting the inverse side of that. What a great experience. Yeah. Talk a little bit about, then that led then to Active, which at that time was a private equity backed company. And so what were the differences, going from, say, the GE healthcare model to something that now it's not just one business unit, one segment, but a lot of different businesses, a collection of different businesses in different markets, different customers, different geographies. What was that like?
Yeah, it's interesting you call out Vista. So Vista was actually my second private equity backed company. So Carestream is actually owned at the time was owned by Onyx, which is a private equity out of Toronto, Canada.
Yep.
And as you know, and I suspect many of our listeners know, I mean, every PE has their own different flavor and different growth strategies for their portfolio companies.
Right.
And coming out of Carestream, which traditionally has been more of a very hands-off type of management style, transitioning that to Vista, which was really a phenomenal eye-opener for me in terms of how much rigor is put into daily, weekly, monthly rhythm and cadence in terms of reporting to all the way to actually implementing change at a rapid speed. And so that was really, even though I've done a lot of different integrated programs prior to that, I would say looking at Vista and an active network really gave me the opportunity to take, at the time, a very focused on demand gen only type of model to really expand that to much more broad and holistic programming. And so in my mind, again, just because that's each different PE portfolio management style, that was a tremendous amount of learning opportunity, but also just be able to apply all the other learnings I've had elsewhere into that company, and ultimately it resulted in a transition to global payments.
Right. Yep. Exactly. And then, so that was the public company experience, and then you got lured away to another private equity back, another prolific investor with again a different strategy with ABC, now Fitness Solutions. Talk a little bit about that journey, because that was really coming in now almost more at the ground floor with a more mature business, but really having to build a lot of these functions up from the ground floor, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if folks haven't picked up a theme already with my career, let me just say that I've spent my entire career now in healthcare, and now shifting from more of a diagnostic care in hospital to something a little bit more proactive and more prolific in nature, which is really embedded into a consumer lifestyle, right? So that started with Active Network, and now with ABC Fitness Solutions.
Right.
So let me just call out the fact that, as a marketer, you have to be passionate about what you do in the market and the clients that you serve. So that, so for me, I've always been with software. I've always been companies that had a purpose, if you will. And so that was, from a personal goal or personal development, that's always been a natural transition for me. Now, the transition from Active to ABC, to be honest, was a very natural one. Thoma Bravo, to your point, has a very different style, but they're very much honing in now on a very much of a commercial playbook. So not only do they care about demand generation, but they're also looking for much more scalability and sustainability. And I'm sure a lot of folks have heard this, this whole CAC to LTV ratio, and making sure that the growth is very much sustainable, not immediately, but also longer term. That is something that we're honestly wrestling with now. And so having done that at Active and in Global Payments, where, again, we were very much honing in on booking contribution as a model, we're now, applying that here at ABC Fitness Solutions, but continuing to expand from that and really thinking about a much more holistic life cycle cost and ultimately profitability with our clients.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So we have quite a bit of diversity in our client base as well, and so those that are venture or growth equity backed have a pretty laser focus on CAC to LTV. But it's changing so rapidly as they grow and learn that it's almost a benchmark that they have to continually evaluate. And so you have to build that muscle in. Conversely, sometimes with older companies that have had success for a long time, they become very focused on just cash flow and aren't necessarily as focused on the economic return of that cash flow. And that's, again, where that CAC to LTV ratio comes in, which is it's not just about revenue and EBITDA. It's about the capital that you have to deploy to get that and be efficient with it. And that's especially true, we think, with privately held companies that may not have that private equity investment or are seeking that private equity investment, is to really be thoughtful about that. And that's one of the first places you start, because it's the governor that tells you, the compass to tell you which way to go.
Absolutely. And to be honest, you and I have chatted about this before. To your point, that is a North Star for you to start to really think about your strategic planning all around. And that takes time. And it's not just a marketing function, to be honest. That is really a cross-functional effort for the entire organization to line around. And luckily, again, working with the ABC Fitness Solutions team, we're all laser focused on it. And this is something we're wrestling with continuously. And to your point, it's not a once and done type of exercise, but it's an iterative effort for sure.
Yep. So believe it or not, we're 12 minutes in. Actually,
okay.
12 minutes left. Excuse me. So yeah, I told you it was going to go fast. So let's talk about your 2 insights, because there's a ton of experience in there, and I'm anxious to hear these 2 insights.
Yeah. So let me start. I think that was the conversation around CAC to LTV translates to the immediate insight that I would love to share is that marketing at the end of the day needs to be positioned both internally and externally as a catalyst for growth. And I've heard this time and time again. I've heard marketers tell me, with companies all sizes, I can't get funding, I can't get buy-in, right? And I'm being viewed as a cost center within the organization. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's with every dollar you spend, whether you look at it as a return on advertising spend and or ROI or just CAC to LTV, really, that is the core of how you really define your functional team's value.
Yep.
And that, to be honest, it stems from not just demand gen, which I know is probably the easiest measure for CAC to LTV, but the investment that you make into product marketing as well to change enablement and
so true.
That program activation, that entire cycle of marketing activation is where I think marketers tend to struggle with. Meaning, so perfect example, I think about the active network example. When I first came in, it was a very profitable and very efficient marketing organization. We were looking at a booking contribution of 33% across the board, which for a lot of companies, that's like great benchmark, right? And one of the things that we introduced there was really start to think about, not only just the volume of leads that you bring in, but also quality and also velocity to which you can accelerate within that cycle.
Right.
And so we introduce things like, for example, actual product marketing, competitive displacements, and really thinking about how we optimize our channel communication. That really boosted, within the 6 months, we went from 33% to 45% booking contribution. And that's just not even changing the framework that was already there, the marketing automation technology, the whole entire baseline was the same, but just by being able to honing in on, hey, where can I refine my content, my messaging and positioning through product marketing and channel enablement, we were able to make immediate impact. And so, right away, we're like, so back to then justification with, my financial counterparts or my CEO at the time, it's like, well, why do you need to spend more money on white papers or content or thought leadership? Well, this is why, right? You see the actual boost from the baseline to when you start to get more, not mind share, but also wallet share from your clients. That's what that translates to. And so I think, a modern marketer, it's not one or the other anymore. You really do have to pull all levers and think about where you are in terms of your business cycle, like in maturity, to be able to say, okay, how can I, as a marketing head of marketing or just a marketer in general, help create value within that customer journey and life cycle?
Yeah, and obviously singing our song that the marketing is a catalyst for growth. I mean, one of the ways that we put it is that marketing is eating sales, and it's meant to be, a bit of a poke in the eye. Sales going away, of course not. But what it really means is, if you look at how your buyers are buying today in almost every segment, it is predominantly farther and farther down the funnel until they get into a sales conversation, which means marketing has to carry a lot of the load, which also means it has to own up to and have responsibility for the ultimate outcome, which is revenue, and in this case, economically generated revenue. So that's a great point.
Well, I mean, you also hear, right, a B2B buyer nowadays, spend a lot more time doing their own research and their own investigation before they even become as a known lead, if you will, within your funnel. And so,
Right.
So it's almost like that tip of the iceberg. There's so much work underneath that before they even surface. And so that, that's all done. It's not just, hammering them with ads and campaigns, but really, how do you create a compelling message of every step along the way, be able to progressively profile them, customizing that information and personalizing that message throughout that every step of that journey. Again, it's through content, it's through activation. That's how you get that whole CAC to LTV ratio that we were talking about. So every dollar that you spend across the entire journey becomes much more effective.
And just not to gloss over it, but for those that aren't familiar, the CAC is customer acquisition cost and LTV is lifetime value. And it is a measure of the functionally economic return of the investment that you're making. And it's an important variable to keep track of.
I think you're thinking.
Yeah, I do it all the time. I'm like, wait a minute, acronyms, bad. So let's jump quickly to your second insight, which I believe is related. And then let's come back and talk a little bit how we can tactically get started with those, practically make the step in that direction.
Yeah, without sounding too academic. So the second one is you have to be obsessive about data. Again, knowing that there's never going to be perfect data, it is then about, to me, it's about iterative process and fine adjustments. And so I would say why that is important, because again, what you learned 6 months ago may not apply 6 months later.
Yes.
The pandemic being a perfect example. We set out the 2020 year with a perfectly planned content editorial calendar with activations, events, in-person, digital, everything planned out. Guess what? March, that went all out of the window.
Yeah.
And we had to really think hard about, what is our buyer intent, our sentiment, the readiness. I mean, that's not data that you could easily find right away. And so we have to do a lot of correlation. Again, it's not perfect. We had to make some assumptions along the way, but that ultimately helped us drive the second half of the year and how we think about activation and programs along the way. And if we didn't have at least some baseline framework at the time, we wouldn't be able to, really understand what was before versus after. And so I think, again, as a modern marketer, you really have to be all around comfortable with data and be able to ask and look for trends, to be able to ask some tough questions, not just within your own team, but also allowing then anticipate the questions that you're probably going to get from the board. And knowing that, again, knowing that it's not always going to be perfect, but by doing maybe small batches of testing or doing small incremental weekly sprints, if you will. I know you and I talked about that as a best practice. Small batches, sprints, all those things, as soon as you start to implement something, gives you data as feedback that allows you to make even better decisions at the next round. So that iterative process, I know in the engineering world, in the software world, we call it agile. And that's something we could all use, I think, in marketing as well. Yeah,
especially to your point, in a rapidly changing environment, which I would argue if you're growing, even without a pandemic, your environment is changing, right? You're reaching new customers, you're identifying new product needs. And the only way to really understand that is to be able to measure that. And I think a lot of times, so let's talk a little bit about, because I think that can be paralyzing, right? Is that we want to get started. The idea is get started. You've heard it before, fail fast. Well, we at least want to plan and learn from that so we don't continue to fail. But there's something to be said for, you're better off to get it out there and learn from it and iterate on it. But I think sometimes companies can feel like they don't really know where to start. So as you think about companies that perhaps had a more traditional view of marketing, where it's perhaps more brand and almost PR and things like that, versus actually being actively involved in the revenue equation, what are some of the things that you have seen take companies that have been successful take that first step? How does that work for them?
Yeah, that's a great call out. So let me just maybe share the ABC journey with folks, because again, we had zero marketing automation platform in place. We weren't doing any campaigns and demand gen, and majority of our majority of our spend were in-person events and sponsorships or in brand awareness type of advertising. And so to me, the framework that I've always adapted, maybe this is from my GE days, it's people, process, and technology. And those are the three levers that you have to start with. So let's start with technology as the back end. Like, so right away, we had to go and implement a proper marketing automation platform for us to start the benchmarking. Baseline data, then it's not perfect, but you have to start with that. And looking at what you're spending and ultimately measuring then what was your return on ad spend, just in general. So that's the technology part. We also have to look at process, because the technology, as great as technology is, if you don't have a process in place. So for example, we didn't even have a proper monthly cadence in place for sprints, for email communications with our client. I mean, emails are really the cheapest channel, right? So if you're just starting out, you don't know where to start there. Start sending emails, starting to measure, start to do some small batches of A/B testing, understand what people are responding to, at what time of the day are they responding, where are they coming from, right? So again, that gave us very little, but still some baseline information as to how our clients were interacting with us, and therefore we could use that as an indicator for what prospects would be reacting as well. And then last but not least, people. You know, I would hope that as a marketing leader within your business, you would want that digital and that data as a core part of your DNA. Every marketer and every modern marketer really moving forward, again, they don't all have to be very comfortable in like running Power BI reports or dashboards, but they should at least understand why they're doing certain things and what that impact should look like. So I'll use a perfect example. My event marketing manager, she is not the greatest in technology, but she understands that if I don't track my leads, if I don't have SLAs around the lead capturing process, I cannot measure success.
Right.
So building into the process, having the people who understand that became very, very important. So, like I said, you know, start small if you can. If you already have a marketing automation platform, just start to do some testing. Understand where you're at. Use that as baseline. Every week, every other week becomes your testing ground.
Yeah, it's interesting that you, and we're actually wrapping up here, believe it or not. It's interesting that you said people, process, technology, and then started with technology. And it's very consistent with what we see as well, which is people is actually, that is the silver, if there is a silver bullet, that is the silver bullet, right? But if you bring in people and you haven't thought through the technology and the process, then all you have are frustrated people. And I think that the other thing that I know you've done well is, but even before that, is you mentioned this definition of success. It's like, well, what is it we're trying to accomplish? And in an intermediate period of time, that opens up the doors to the next step. And let's put the technology and processes in place so that when we bring in the people, they have the tools and the guardrails to understand where they're going and why. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know, so even without any process and framework, when I first started, we were doing 25% booking contribution because we were participating in events and like the traditional marketing, if you will. We're now at 54% as of this last month. And we had just literally kicked off a lot of our demand gen and programs in July.
Right.
And every month we're getting better. Is it perfect?
We had this little hiccup in the spring that, you know, I don't remember what happened, but
I don't remember what happened in the spring, but you know, it is, I would just, again, I would encourage everybody to just try small things every week, try something new every week, think about how you're tracking those data and continue to leverage those sustainable process and to help you continue to get better every week.
Yep.
It's
all right. Awesome. I totally agree. And so believe it or not, we're out of time. But before we finish, I want to come back to the paddleboard dragon boat thing. So tell me about how you got involved there.
Oh my goodness. It started in university when I was in Canada. It was just something we saw at an event, and we thought, hey, we could probably get 20 of our friends together and hang out in the beer tent and do some sports while we're at it.
How hard can it be? Yeah.
I mean, how hard could it be? Exactly. And ever since I've been hooked, the sport has taken me all around the world and have met phenomenal people. And I've also transitioned from an athlete to a coach as well. That's been super rewarding and gratifying. And so, I have to say, some people run, to clear the head because, as soon as you hit the pavement, there's a very cleansing, meditative almost effect. And for me, it's paddling. There's nothing beats early morning on the water and just you against the world. So
yeah, that's awesome. We'll see if we can't dig up some pictures and put them. All right. So let's just to recap, Cristine's 2 insights for go-to-market success are really be thinking of marketing as a catalyst for growth, right? It is definitely more than a cost center, and is actually critical to a company's growth. And then related to that is obsess over the data so that you can enable iterations. It's about quick test and learn. All right, Cristine. Well, thank you always for your time. It's always a delight, and very great to have you here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. Well, I just am so excited to have Cristine on the show. Just a wealth of knowledge and so much happening, and we're going to learn some more and see a lot from her in the future. So thanks, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week on 2 in 22. Life is moving fast, so if you missed the live show of 2 in 22, you can get the video recording and highlights by subscribing at 2in22.com. You can also get the audio version by subscribing to the 2 in 22 podcast on your favorite platform. Thanks for spending time with us.